This is Amplifying Autism, where every voice matters and every story shines. Join us as autistic authors, professionals, and trailblazers share their journeys, real stories, and real insight from those changing the world, one conversation at a time. I'm so pleased to welcome to the show Krista West, late diagnosed autistic, founder and CEO of Folk Embroidery. Krista delights in bringing ancient beauty to the modern world with embroidery designs inspired by traditional Mediterranean folk textiles. Introduced to traditional folk embroidery in Greece, she fell in love with the vibrant colors and historic motifs. She began stitching textiles for her own home and quickly realized there was a lot of interest in this historic craft. She opened Folk Embroidery to share the beauty of this art with others. She travels widely to speak about it, and when she's not traveling, Krista happily spends her days in her studio in Central Oregon, designing patterns and making kits for customers and shops around the world. Well, Krista, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, one thing I know about you is you have not always known that you were autistic.
No, I actually was not formally diagnosed until I was 50 years old.
How has your life changed since you got that diagnosis?
Well, it's interesting. I suspected that I could potentially be on the spectrum for a long time. My dad was on the spectrum, and he was never formally diagnosed until he went into hospice, and his social worker caught it. And his social worker was basically said to me, well, you know that maybe your dad is. And I was like, oh yeah, I've had my suspicions for a long time. And after that, after my dad died, I thought a lot about it. And I, for a long time, just thought that my quirks were because I'd grown up with a profoundly autistic parent who had trouble navigating the world. And so I had been his translator, his social translator, all of my life. And I just thought that a lot of my quirks were from that. But the more time went on, I kept realizing that that wasn't necessarily the case. And that I had some day-to-day stuff that I really struggled with that didn't seem to be a struggle for other people. And so when I was, it took me about a year and a half to finally work up the courage to go in for a diagnosis. And then I finally did. And what really changed for me was just understanding that there were going to be areas of my life that I needed to have a little bit more self-compassion and that I was going to need some supports. For the most part, I'm really fortunate. I am in a field I love. I have work that I love. I've been fortunately successful at it. And it really fits very, very well with my patternicity brain. But there are some things that are still real challenges for me. It's really difficult for me to talk on the phone to people, customers and things like that. There are just other things like that. And so that diagnosis kind of gave me the tool that I needed, the first tool to realize I might need more tools. So that's really what changed for me, was the idea that I was going to need some extra tools. And I have to admit, it was really frustrating at first because I have things that I can do that I've known for a long time other people can't do. I mean, I can see patterns, I can see things, my processing speed is incredibly fast. And that was all great. But so it was hard for me at first to accept the fact that I was going to have these, I don't like to use limitations, but just some things that I was going to need some assists with. Yeah.
You mentioned a telephone, and I know a lot of autistic folk in my family and friends really do not like to talk on the telephone. What do you do instead? Because you are a business owner, you're a CEO.
Well, fortunately, I just realized it was my very, very sensitive hearing that made it very difficult for me to talk on the phone. People would cough, they would do anything, and it would literally feel like somebody was stabbing a needle in my ear. And so what I just actually started doing in my previous career, I worked as a custom tailor. And so many people wanted to call and talk through their orders. And I finally just told people, I'm sorry, I have a hearing issue. You're going to need to email me. And it actually ended up working out very well and was very good for my business because that forced them to be clear about what they wanted and what their goals and aims were. And it also gave me a written record of our transactions and of details and things like that, and allowed me to see in print. I do a lot better in print. And so I could catch things instantly in print that I literally could not catch on a phone call because I was so busy fighting the noise. And so actually most of my customers were understanding when I just explained. I said, I've got a hearing issue. Talking on the phone is not really comfortable for me. Let's switch this over to email. And then now my business is all e-commerce. And so all of my communication, I can't even remember the last time I've been on the phone with somebody to do anything having to do with business. And that's where I really feel like there are certain fields, e-commerce, certain creative fields where you can have, your preferred method of communication, and it's very much accepted.
And that's amazing. Now, I know in addition to being your CEO and owning your company, you have done a lot of speaking engagements and traveling.
Yeah.
Do you have any do you have any travel tips for autistic folk? Because airports, the worst.
Airports, oh my word. Okay, well, for me, for years and years and years, that was one of the big areas that I really did not want to admit that I needed some extra support. But I would navigate the airport with the noise. And for me, too, the other thing that's really challenging for airports is when you've grown up the way I did, not being diagnosed, you're used to masking. And so you're constantly scanning in any public setting. And I find that is exhausting in an airport. And added to that, I can sense what's going on with people. And which is funny because it's a common misconception, I feel like, that people in the autism community are not empathetic or things like that. And I actually kind of align more with the
Mm,
newer research that is showing that we are actually overly empathetic, and that's the problem.
yes.
So when I'm
Yes.
in a setting like an airport, I mean, oh my word, I'm hearing every little crying child. I'm hearing their suffering, and the mom who's mad because like they didn't get the seats they wanted, or the dad who's like trying to struggle through everything. All the business people who are just stressed out. It's like I'm walking into this wave of emotion that I find very overwhelming. So I've started doing a couple of things. When I go to the airport now, I make sure that I carry wired headphones, because you can have those all the way through the airport. So I've got an old pair of Bose headphones that I use so you can clearly see that I have something in my ears. And when I get on the plane, I do not have to turn them off for takeoff and landing. So that's the first
Perfect.
thing I do. It's a little old school, but that old school tech works a little bit better than some of the modern tech. I
Mhm.
also wear sunglasses through the airport. As a
Oh,
visual person, that helped tremendously. You will get pushback at TSA pre-check, and there will be places where people act like you're very suspicious because you're wearing sunglasses. Um,
oh no.
but I also just carry my TSA allows you to print off a card about your disability, and
Good.
I carry that card with me. And then I will oftentimes take advantage of pre-boarding. But if I'm going to do that, I usually go up to the clerk ahead of time and say, listen, I'm not in a wheelchair. I know my disability is not visible, but I am autistic. Here's my documentation. I carry a letter with me. And so I'm going to board early. And then they're usually incredibly understanding.
Oh,
And that those things alone, and then the other thing I do is I just give myself permission not to socialize. I put my headphones
perfect.
in, I have my sunglasses on, and I just don't talk to anybody through the whole flight. And so I just kind of go into this travel bubble. And that really, really helps because yes, I do travel, and I travel internationally. I'm in Greece every year or 2 years to do research. So
Wow.
I had to find a way to make this work for me. Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah. Oh, and airports are so overwhelming. I have an autistic family member who really struggled with it. He found that he could handle the noise, he could handle the crowds, but it's like each one of them was reducing his strength and his ability. But this one particular person has, when he walks on patterns,
Mhm.
he kind of feels it right through his shoes, right into his feet. So he won't like step on a line if it's different colored tiles. He will just step on certain colors, so as not to have two different colors under his foot. Well, our airport is just this carpet is all probably all airports are the same, but just as he was about to pass out one time waiting in line. We realized that if we get him a wheelchair, once his feet are off the ground, he gets so much of his strength back.
Mhm.
But having to manage all those things plus feet on weird pattern carpet, it just, he needed that extra step of getting a wheelchair.
The other thing that I do, and I don't have to use this very often, but if I've been doing a speaking engagement or a trip and I'm coming back extremely exhausted, I find it really difficult to be verbal when I'm just totally depleted. And which I know sounds funny because I'm going to speak, but for me, that verbal ability just to socialize verbally is really tough for me afterwards. So the other thing, and I learned this from someone else, is I carry the deaf writing app on my phone. And so if I need to actually communicate sometimes, I will just also give myself permission to go nonverbal, but carry the app with me so that I can actually still communicate with people written. And I don't use that all the time. Sometimes I'm fine, but I have it kind of in my toolkit for travel. Yeah.
Tell us a little more about that app, that toolkit. I don't know if everyone
Uh,
has heard of that.
Okay, what is the name of the app? It's basically just one of the apps where you can type in your message and it will blow it up larger and you'll turn it around and show it to someone.
Oh, perfect.
The only problem I've run into with it though is that if somebody sees it and they know sign language, they start trying to speak to you in sign
Oh,
language. And then
no.
that's like a whole nother conversation. But and then in some airports, it's like 200 airports in the world now do the sunflower program. So
I've
the
heard of that.
sunflower lanyard program. But my
Mm.
experience in that is there aren't enough airports for that to actually be that useful.
Oh,
There's so few that do it that most airport employees are like, huh? What is that? Yeah.
oh. Well, maybe someday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I am loving looking at the beautiful colors behind you of
Oh,
your threads. And while I gave a little thumbnail bio in the intro, I would love to hear you talk more about your business. I find it fascinating.
okay. Well, it's actually pretty funny. One of the things that was really challenging for me in kind of pre-diagnosis was figuring out how to get downtime. I knew I needed a little bit more of it to process my day than the average person, but I found it really hard that it felt kind of unproductive to, I needed something that I could be working at. And I'm very kinesthetic. I'm very mobile. Kind of moving all the time. And literally since I was a child, I have done handcrafts. So from the time I learned to sew when I was about 4 years old, and I've pretty much always had a needle and thread or a project going ever since then, because it's a really great way for me to just emotionally regulate, to quiet, to kind of sift through my day. And so I've had a personal practice of stitching, of doing some kind of hand embroidery for 25 years at least. And I was in Greece for work for my tailoring company. And I was doing research and meeting with mill agents. And a friend, this was like maybe almost 20 years ago, a friend introduced me to traditional Greek folk embroidery that was done for the home. And as soon as I saw it, I absolutely fell in love. It was love at first sight. There was something so different about it. The motifs absolutely appeal to a patternicity brain. They are a lot of stylized motifs. They're very regular. They're done on a type of fabric that's called an even weave fabric or a counted thread fabric. And you're essentially creating these elaborate, intricate designs that can feature meanders or scroll work or this sort of a thing. And I fell in love and I started collecting designs and I started talking with friends and I just kept educating myself about traditional Greek folk embroidery. And about maybe, and then I started stitching like crazy. I started stitching these really elaborate things for my own house and all that. And then people started asking me, where did you get those patterns? And I said, oh, well, just look on the internet. I'm sure there's something out there. And then I realized, no, there wasn't anything in the United States in English about traditional Greek folk embroidery. And so I opened up my folk embroidery company and I thought I was just going to be creating these patterns kind of on the side. It was very much my side hustle. This was about 7 years ago. And but what happened is people were really intrigued and there was this whole cross stitch and embroidery community that fell in love with the historic designs the way that I had. And so it started taking off. But one of the first challenges I met was that people wanted the authentic fabric from Greece. And because of my tailoring background, I was already used to working with mill agents and companies in Greece. So I already had the structure for that. And so I found that I actually now work with a third generation family in Athens that produces traditional folk fabrics that have been used for folk embroidery for centuries. And I started making kits. And I never thought I would make kits. It was really kind of funny because I don't think at that point I'd ever bought an embroidery kit myself ever in my life. I was used to always doing my own math and my own calculations and designing a project the way I wanted it to look. Well, it turned out that there were all of these people out there that did not like that part. And for me, being
Mm.
coming from a patternicity brain, is the part I absolutely love. Um, Give me 15 hours to sit there and design and figure out all that math, and I'm absolutely in my happy place. But all of these other people, they're like, oh, I hate the math. I don't want to do the math. I don't want to do the calculations. Just give me a kit. And so I started producing kits. And actually, it grew so much that I had to retire out of my tailoring business about 3 years ago because I could not keep up. And so now, actually, I have, we ship worldwide. We ship all over. We do both, we sell through our website as well as wholesale. So my designs are now in about 200 shops worldwide. My
Wow.
designs are even found as far as Norway, Germany, like all over. And it's been really, really great because I am helping connect people to folk embroidery, both those that have never seen it and are really drawn to it, but also those people who have a cultural connection to a country or a place in which folk embroidery is practiced. So I get these wonderful emails from people now that are like, oh, I just did one, and like my grandmother was Greek and I feel so close to her when I do this. To the point where now I have families that will regularly send me photos of their heirlooms and say, would you release this as a kit and keep this design alive? And so it's been this amazing work. So I feel like I get to really, it's not just like, I don't know, it's not just like a job. It really feels like a passion for me and a vocation that I just kind of ended up being in this place and time where I could help keep folk embroidery alive. And many of these patterns would have literally just ended up, lost to posterity. But now, because we have digital patterns, we have PDF patterns, we have records of them, we're documenting them. It's been great. So now I go every 2 years, I go to Greece and I do a research trip. I was just there last year. And I was actually, so I go around and I visit folk costume museums and I work with an embroidery tutor there. And yeah, that's what I do now.
That is so amazing, Krista. So many people today are getting in touch with their roots and they're doing genealogy. And to be able to actually have a piece of the fabric that their mothers and grandmothers and great grandmothers had done, what a wonderful gift you're giving people.
Well, I like to think so. But the other aspect of it that I also really, really love is that it's allowed me to talk a lot. I do presentations and articles on the benefits of meditative stitching, on basically handcraft as a wellness tool. And that does definitely have some overlap with the neurodivergent community. Many people, you would be amazed how many people, undiagnosed neurodivergent or diagnosed neurodivergent, who have made their way into the craft community because they've realized this is the thing they can do that helps provide calm and respite and restoration and emotional regulation and all of these things. So it's actually, to me, feels very exciting that I get to kind of encourage people and support people along those journeys as well.
And I love that because the ability to take what feeds your soul and to make a living doing that you love to do. I mean, that is everyone's dream.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, it's, I mean, it is a lot of hard work. This last year, we had an Instagram post go viral, and that
Oh,
was exciting. Everyone's
wow.
like, ooh, that's the dream. But I'm like, nobody really realizes how much work comes after that. There's a lot of work that comes after. And
Wow.
so we grew 40% this year. It was this huge amount of growth. And so now I'm training other people and I'm learning to work with other people in my space when I'm used to like being mostly by myself. But I feel like it's been a good challenge. It's been a really good challenge. And yeah, I do love that I get to do this work.
I love that you're doing it too. And I've seen on your website so many beautiful the way the colors go together, the way the designs work together is just so visually pleasing. It's like giving your eyes a gift. You know,
Yeah.
just
That exactly. We have so many people that comment that way. And we're also helping people understand how you can make something and use it in your home. Because a lot of the embroidery industry in the United States is you make something and you frame it and you hang it on the wall. But framing
yeah.
is very expensive. And so in Greece, everybody embroiders and like uses things in their house.
Oh,
They make pillows or cushion covers or little wall hangings or little runners or all this kind of thing. So that's been kind of great too, because we're helping people who we're helping them kind of learn how to use the stuff that they're making. So that's been great too.
you know, I recently got some pieces that my grandmother had embroidered. And again, this was, like you said, to be used. So tea towels with
Hmm.
little embroidery on, and they're just falling apart now
Yeah.
because I'm in my 70s. So my grandmother, you know, this was from another time, but it's wonderful to see it and hold it, even if I can't use it as a tea towel anymore. Um,
Yeah.
it means so much to just have that, doesn't it?
Yes. Yes. Well, and I'm seeing a lot of people now who are creating heirlooms and textiles for the next generation. So
Oh,
that's
nice.
also people are thinking about this. Interestingly enough, a funny product that I created just kind of more or less on a whim was a little basket cloth. And now those are some of our top selling designs because people are like, it's something they can use now. People want to have that connection. For example, I have a lot of young moms and they'll say, okay, I'm stitching this basket cloth and I want my kids to see it on our table, like whether it's every day or a special occasion, but it's something that they associate with like sitting around the table with their family.
Oh,
And so this is something that can go with that child later on when they launch into adulthood. And I love being able to help people encourage people to use their stuff. Like the idea is it will wear out. Of course, it'll wear out. It'll get stained. Those things will happen, but we're using them.
yeah.
And that use like creates this extra layer of meaning into the piece.
Oh, and that is so wonderful, that the feeling that is imbued in the piece of art, usable art,
Mhm.
those memories, it means so much. One thing that I remember the last time that we saw each other some years ago, you had shared realizing that face blindness was part of autism, and I just want to say I'm not autistic, but I do have a touch of face blindness, which I had been ashamed of for a long time. I just thought I must be a terrible person that you know, and I'd make excuses like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see her. I guess I need new glasses." But what was your experience of, understanding face blindness for yourself?
Okay, so face blindness. Wow. I remember the day I found out I was face blind because I had been compensating all these years. And I just thought, I just don't have a great memory for faces. But then it was an article about a celebrity or someone who had face blindness, and there was like a little internet quiz. And my husband was like, "You should maybe consider this quiz." I took the quiz. And this was when Obama was president. I
Oh,
couldn't even tell Obama. Like once you take away the other distinguishing features, I couldn't even tell who the president was. And I
oh,
was like, "Okay, this is something I'm definitely going to have to get out in front of." And so for me now, especially because when I do speaking engagements, I now like do embroidery retreats and things like that. And
oh,
so now I've just learned to be extremely upfront about it and say, hey, here's the deal. If I don't have time this weekend to memorize all of your outfits and your gait and all of this about you. So like, I'm gonna actually, and I get right out in front of it, and I tell people, you're gonna come up to me in an hour or two, and I'm gonna look at you completely blankly. And I said, it's not that I'm being rude. It's that I actually cannot remember who you are. So when I'm in those settings, I just make a little quick, household announcement, the little housekeeping announcements at the
yes.
beginning of like a speaking engagement or a retreat or workshop. I say, housekeeping announcement, I have face blindness. If I look at you blankly, just tell me your name. Say, I am. And I just tell people what's really helpful to me if you can say, I am, and we talked about, or give me a hook. And so that has been a game changer for me professionally So I just decided I had it so profoundly that I just could, this was like being blind. It would be like trying to pretend you're not actually blind and going into a setting and not at least informing people. Because I have that hyper focused face that a lot of like neurodivergents have. Like when I am focused and zeroed in, oh man, I actually look like I'm angry. And I also do not have any sad affect. I literally cannot make the sad face. And so that can be really problematic for me in a professional setting. So I've just learned to be, hey, come up. If you come up to me again, please tell me your name again and tell me what we talked about so I can locate you. And actually, people are wonderful about it. People
Oh,
are fantastic. I've simply never had a situation since then that people weren't incredibly supportive and extremely helpful, to the point where it even gets kind of funny because literally they'll literally walk away, come back to say something to me. I do know it's the same person. And they'll introduce themselves all over again, even if it's literally been 1 minute and they've stepped
good
away
for
for,
them.
10 feet. So my experience has been really positive. Once I kind of just got out in front of it and said, this is an issue for me and I need your help, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
I I I think having that out there and stating it is so important. I had a friend whose, son, in high school came home one day and said, "Something weird is going on. My girlfriend has disappeared from school. She's just not at school anywhere, but there's this girl sitting in her chair who has just been looking daggers at me all day. It's like she's really mad at me. Why?" Well, his girlfriend got a different hairstyle.
Hairstyles throw me, beards, any sort of
Yeah.
like mustaches. Oh my gosh. My family still teases me because my son-in-law has a mustache and they'd be like, "Oh, so does he have a mustache or not?" And I'm like, "I have no idea. Like I don't remember." So, yeah. I mean, so now I try to laugh about it. It was not funny in the beginning because it really, when
Yeah.
you really start recognizing the level that you've been coping with it, you do
Yes.
actually feel blind for a little while. And then
Yeah.
I just did, classic neurodivergent move. I went and did a bunch of research on it and figured out
Good.
like, okay, what was the issue, and that it had to do with like a part of my brain not forming correctly, the part that does faces. And yeah, so yeah, I again, it's one of those areas. I don't actually talk much about being neurodivergent just because it's kind of auxiliary. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm really fortunate, and I'm in the creative community. There is a whole lot of us here that are quirky. So like
Yes.
quirky is sort of like how we roll in the creative community. So that really helps. And I do feel like I have had enough experiences in which in the early days it was sort of like, oh, I'm autistic, I want to tell everybody. And then I realized I just got a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot of negative pushback, more just sort of like, well, how can someone like you be like that? That was a lot of it because I am extremely high functioning and very good at masking. And I do professional things, I do things that we don't have a category for autistics to do yet. And so I actually am really looking forward to the day when people can say, kind of just mention like, hey, I'm autistic, in the same way that I say, yeah, I'm artistic. I'm artistic. I'm artistic. I'm creative.
Yes.
It'd be nice if it was just kind of that kind of neutral. But in my
Yeah.
experience, it hasn't been neutral.
Mhm.
And I mean, I don't know if I share this with other neurodivergent, but I'm also extremely sensitive about, I would never want someone to think that I'm using my disability to manipulate someone. That's
Yes.
something like for my own personal like integrity, that's really important to me. And so I would never want anybody to kind of, and I know this probably sounds super, I don't know what, but I don't feel comfortable like using that to start a conversation or sway a
Mhm.
conversation. So, I mean, if people approach me and ask me about it, I'm an open book. But I really rarely professionally do I make the first move on that.
You know, a lot of people feel the same way. Like they have so much going for them that they don't want people to think, "Oh, you're trying to get attention or you're trying to get it easier for you." If someone needs an accommodation, whoever they are, they should get that accommodation. Um,
Yes.
but not everybody needs the same ones.
Exactly. And I mean, I do think we're going to eventually head to a place in society where asking, everybody needs some kind of accommodation, and or could use one, or it could be a positive thing in their life. And so I feel like it'd be really lovely if we can get to the point as humans where there's like an accommodation buffet, and
Oh,
everybody's just
yes.
choosing what their accommodation is in that particular setting or whatever. Um, yeah, because it changes depending on location. For me, in an
Yes.
airport, oh my gosh, an airport, I am definitely not at my best. I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed, and my vocal tone, I lose my vocal tone when I'm stressed. So I'm
Mm,
gonna sound really pissed off. But I'm not. I'm just either I'm overwhelmed or I'm scared, or I can't quite figure out where I'm
yeah.
supposed to go. And so something like that, it would just be nice to be like, okay, in this space, I need this accommodation or that accommodation. Yeah. And that other people could ask for those too.
I think I love that. I love the phrase you used, an accommodation buffet.
Yeah.
That people could just, "I'll have some of that, I'll have some of that. I don't need that, no thank you."
Hmm.
That would be an ideal world, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think with any accommodation, the people in the neuro-privileged, like myself, I'm not autistic, but there are some accommodations that might be helpful. I mean, I walk with a cane, I have a handicap parking space. Well, I guess I earned those. But there are still times when I think, if somebody comes up to me and says, "Well, you shouldn't be using a handicap parking space," but nobody ever does with me.
Well, and I
Young,
would like to be in settings like for a long time. I thought it would be amazing as someone in the handcraft world to go into a corporate setting and be able to say, some of your people might actually listen better in meetings if we give them something to do with their hands. So let me come in and show you what are the things that they can do that are the least distracting, but have the highest rate of return on comprehension. And I would love to be able to do that because I also feel like if you have an accommodation buffet, then you can also have an attributes buffet. And I feel like this is
yeah.
it's the flip side of being neurodiverse is that you do have these things that you need accommodations in, but there's also things like I never ever have to think about how to be focused. Like never. I just did a podcast interview, an hour-long interview where I talked about how I work and how I go into this deep state of focus. And the interviewers thought it was like amazing. And I had friends who were like, I'm sharing this with my husband's engineering team and stuff like this.
Good.
And to me, this is just another day. So I feel like
Yeah.
if we could really look at this as being this different brain wiring, as being an adjunct, an add on, a plus, a positive in certain ways. Because I just don't think, it seems normal for me. I'm willing to make the trade off that I can see patterns and have this hyper focus if the airport is difficult for me. Like, I am willing to make that trade off. Like, that's okay with me because I would never want to give up my patternicity. So, but I also feel like people like me, we might be able to present a unique viewpoint or some
Yes.
additional skills or tools that I think neurotypical people could really benefit from.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking a lot of companies, some big companies like computer companies or whatever, um, hire a lot of autistic or otherwise neurodivergent folk. Sometimes they seek them out because they know the strengths in pattern recognition and focus. And sometimes it's just that's the field that people are drawn to. But it would be so wonderful if you could do a workshop for them because also a lot of people I know who have ADHD, if they could be doing something with their hands during the meeting, they could focus so much better.
So much
Um,
better. And
yeah,
handwork is genius for that because it's tiny, it's portable, you take it with you, it's not distracting. There's
yeah.
there's numerous ones. And in fact, in the handcraft, in the history of handcraft, there are all of these little um, subcategories of like walking knitting. Like there's Shetland knitting
Oh,
belts so that the people could actually be tending the sheep and knitting. There's spinning is a very active hands-on thing. There's
yeah.
all these different things that people could use. Even doodling, things like that. There's just a lot of ways. And unfortunately, as a culture, we have labeled those things as non-productive, so we don't bring them in. And I feel like corporations miss out on this because it could actually add a layer of productivity to what they're already doing.
I hope that you get to present this to some CEOs. From one CEO to another, you could help them a lot, increase their productivity among
Yeah.
their people.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of our listeners are people who, like you, went through a lifetime not knowing that they were autistic, and maybe they've recently been diagnosed, or maybe they're just suspecting, but they don't know for sure yet. Do you have any advice or words of wisdom for these people who are just they're where you were some years ago?
Hmm. Yeah, I think the really important piece of advice I would give you um, is to maybe really examine your narratives surrounding neurodiversity, and that maybe actually understanding this about yourself might it has the opportunity to present a lot of self-compassion and to start with being judgment free on yourself, because a lot of us are so we have had a lifetime of masking and trying to fit in and trying to do this, that oftentimes the problem with that is that we lose touch with our real amazing capabilities. And so, actually, traveling along a diagnosis path, figuring out if you are neurodiverse, I actually really love how the younger generation, like my own kids' generation, are just so open about their brain wiring. I had a part-time employee and a seasonal employee in, and she is incredibly busy, and she does all this active stuff. She's a skier and super active. And she came in, and at first I was like, is this going to work? Because I was asking her to do this very sort of slow winding of embroidery floss. And she came to me, she's like, my ADHD brain loves this work. Like every day she'd finish, like, I love this. I feel like this is so restorative. This is so working for me. And she'd put
Oh,
on her headphones and she'd lock in. And her lock in was amazing. I was like, wow, she can focus. Like when she harnesses it, she can totally do it. And it was really great. So I feel like a lot of it is, if you can approach your diagnosis is not so much what's wrong with me, but maybe more what's right with me. What's right with me that I'm
yes.
not letting myself and the people around me really have access to, because I am so focused on what's wrong with me and where I don't fit in, that's just where I'm spending all of my time and my energy. But maybe kind of rotate that energy over to what's right about me. And maybe this will help me figure out the things that are right about me, and I hate to put it even like in that black and white binary kind of right and wrong, but I think anybody who's had a lifetime of masking absolutely knows what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think too, just like being a little more comfortable with being quirky. I mean, I've had to really get more comfortable with that, because in a lot of my professional speaking, I was speaking on like art history and textile history and things like that. And there's very much this expectation that you will be very, buttoned up and very professional and all the things. And one of the things I've loved about the craft community is that I've gotten to kind of be a little bit more of my quirky neurodiverse self. And like I can be excited and be like, oh my gosh, doesn't everybody in the room want to talk about folk embroidery for 3 hours? Let's go. And it's like part of that is like when I bring that energy, I was so afraid for so long to bring that energy and to bring my hyper focus and to kind of bring my whole self into my public world, my public speaking. And once I did, I realized, wait, this is helping people engage with topics that can be a little arcane and boring. And I'm trying to like put some life into that, and I can, because I am crazy enthusiastic. I am so autistic in my hyper focus on embroidery. Like I eat, sleep, breathe embroidery, and my family will attest to that. And so for me to kind of let that out a little bit and share that with other people, it's actually a plus. So I would really encourage people to really examine your narratives and change them, and change your self-talk, change your narratives around all this. And maybe one of the hardest things you have to do is examine, what do you think of autistic people? you know, because a lot of times you're turning that around in the mirror. And I feel like that was part of it too. I only had this kind of one concept of my dad, who was a little challenging, and well, a lot challenging and kind of difficult, and never could do social settings. And I had to expand my own idea of what neurodiversity was once I got my own diagnosis. And that's actually served me really well, I have to say. Yeah.
Well,
So
that's
I
great.
hope that's encouraging.
I think it is because, so many people do beat themselves up. They think, "Oh, why am I so bad at this? What's wrong with me?" A lot of that, "What's wrong with me?" When in fact, there's nothing wrong with them. So, flipping that script and reevaluating and looking at it with a different lens, I
Hmm.
think that's great advice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think this is gonna be helpful for a lot of people. And I love to let your quirky out because in truth, people love quirky people, you
They
know?
do.
Quirky people are the most interesting. Um, when you're trying to button it up so much and mask so hard, it's hard to be interesting because you're not yourself. But
Well, I had one video I did recently that was one of my, I do a monthly like YouTube video for my embroidery folks. And I had one and always, almost always, like I've never had a negative comment. And on this one, but my audience is growing. And so this one was this really negative comment. And it was like, I just can't stand her. And honestly, it was really hurtful and I had to think
yeah,
about it. And it was like, oh my gosh, like, oh boy. And I instantly went back to that, like, okay, I need to button it up. I need to mask more, like in my videos. That was instantly where I went to, just from kind of my upbringing, my training, and all of that. But then I thought more about it and thought, well, why? Maybe I'm not right for that person. And then I actually, in a moment of real transparency and vulnerability, I went to my little stitching group and said, okay, I had this really bad comment. What do you guys think? And they were like, oh my gosh, no, do not change a thing. Like, we love your videos. Like, they're high energy, or they're like all these things, and we love that about you. So like, don't change that. Just don't listen to the trolls. And that was really
yes,
helpful. So I feel like there are going to be things like that. I will warn you, when you let the quirk out, there's going to be like 98% of people who are going to think that is amazing. And there's going to be 2% who don't. But typically, in my experience, it's because their own quirk is so buttoned up. And they're,
yeah,
frankly, it's usually jealousy. They like to let their own quirk out. So
yeah,
yeah, I would just say that. Just don't listen to the haters, like they say.
yep.
Yeah,
Just tune them out.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah. There are always gonna be people that don't agree, but the vast majority are gonna be on your side. So those are the ones to
absolutely.
focus on.
Yeah.
Well, Krista, I have enjoyed this chat so much. Is there any question that you wish that I had asked or any future project that you would like to let us know what you're gonna be up to next?
Oh, really right now, this year, actually, I am doing a ton of like teaching and in-person stuff. So I'm at the Sew Expo in Washington in February, and I'm at the Quilters Affair in Sisters, Oregon in July, and then I'll also be in Greece again this year.
Oh,
So
fun.
that's just if anybody's interested in my designs and my creativity and kind of following along on my journey, I just say you can hop on over to my website. I do emails, I'm on social, all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, and that's really it. Really this year, what I'm really focused on is getting kind of back in to professional speaking and doing more engagements
Nice.
like that, but kind of from where my new positioning in the craft industry is. So that's really what I've got kind of planned. And then of course, lots of great embroidery. I have so many.
Oh,
I just had to whittle it down to 15 designs for this year. So
oh, it must
from
be hard to
21 this last year. So it's like I'm having tons of fun with this. And I would just encourage people, if you're ever wanting to try embroidery as a tool for emotional regulation, hop over to my website. We have stuff, blogs, videos, all the things.
Okay, and, tell us your website.
Oh, website, sorry. My
Sorry.
website is, okay, my company name is Avlia Folk Embroidery. Avlia means courtyard in Greek, and it's where the women would have sat and embroidered. And so it's V as in Victor, LEA, folkembroidery.com.
Wonderful, and is that the best place for people to reach out to you? Because I think our
Or
listeners are gonna
Instagram.
wanna find you.
Yeah, Instagram's great too. You can follow
Ins
me on Instagram. My Instagram account is Krista with a K M West.
Okay. I'll also put those in the show notes so
Yeah,
people can just click on those links.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Krista. I've really loved getting to reconnect with you. It's been years since we've talked, and, this has been so much fun.
Oh, this has been great. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, and I love everything you're doing. And remember, if you want to get into embroidery for self-regulation, go to Krista. What a delight chatting with Krista West. She shared about her diagnosis of autism at age 50, her face blindness and strategies that work for her, as well as travel tips. Here are some important takeaways from this episode. First, understand your own neurodiversity to reframe your narrative. For instance, Change your self-talk to replace past self-judgment with self-compassion. Second, harness your strengths. Don't ask what's wrong with me, but what's right with me. Rotate your energy in that direction. Third, let your quirky out. Get comfortable with being different. Don't be afraid to bring that energy, that hyper focus, and your enthusiasm and your whole self to everything you do. Quirky people are the most interesting. If you want to try embroidery as a tool for emotional regulation, go to Krista's website and find her blogs, videos, kits for beginners, and everything you need at avliafolkembroidery.com. Thank you for listening to Amplifying Autism. This is Wendell Whitcomb Marsh. I'm looking forward to next time. You've been listening to Amplifying Autism, celebrating the voices that shape a more understanding world. Don't miss the next episode. More stories, more insight, and more voices that matter.